Okay guys, this is just a fairly quick video about this bearing upgrade which I did on the Virago compared to the original bushing version, which you can clearly see how much wear the camshaft rotation caused in that one. You can see the wear there, but nothing on the top side, obviously. That's because the camshaft is only loaded from the sprocket only on one place when it's pushing down the valves, and it is quite a lot of pressure. I mean, if you try to squeeze them valve springs together, you know how strong they are, and the leverage from the rocker is quite short, to be honest, because it's touching here and the pivot point for the rocker is about here, and then it stretches out all the way there to the valve. So you can imagine how much force this needs to put onto that to actually push the valve down. So that causes quite a lot of pressure on the bearing surface here on the camshaft when the sprocket trying to turn this, when the chain pulling it, and you can clearly see there. I'm going to put up some high quality pictures. I'm going to zoom in. You will see the markings and no markings on the other side. So that also causes, I know it's not a lot, but also causes a little movement of the camshaft. So when the chain pulls it down and try to push it, so this is moving up and down, up and down, up and down. Maybe a thou altogether what it moves up and down, but that just keep moving and keep digging into the bushings, so eventually it will wear it out, and it could cause big play and then issues with the top end of the bike. Now the bearing is obviously, this one hasn't got any movement up and down that way, because you got them balls there, so up and down this bearing is rock solid. So the camshaft is always in the same position, no matter what. No matter if it's a big force on it or a small force or whatever, this camshaft is exactly the same position, not like with the bushing. This one is not moving whatsoever. I don't know why Yamaha didn't put a bearing in, because this bearing is virtually noiseless. So this is a fag bearing made in Portugal, 6205 C3 bearing. The C3 rating is a tolerance rating on the bearing from the manufacturer. It's quite important to get a C3 in there, which is designed to work over 100 degrees Celsius. This bike is obviously an air-cooled bike, so that cylinder head does get 100 degrees Celsius easily, especially if you're sitting in city, in town, and then just, you know, there's not much of a breeze coming. Trust me, it will heat up to 100 degrees, and you don't want a bearing with small tolerance, so you could actually end up seizing the engine. Probably not, because it's still a bearing, but you could probably damage the bearing, burn it or whatever. That's why I took it apart to have a look if there is any bluing on the bearing or anything which indicates overheating. So I've got nearly 2,000 miles with this bearing installed, and it's good as new, and the bike is virtually silent. So I don't know why they bothered to make this bushing. I mean, even making this bushing to bore it out to the right size and then turn this to the right size to make it a perfect fit. I don't know, it's not cost effective. This bearing cost £10, I think, one of them, and so £20, that's it. I don't know, back in the 80s maybe bearings were too expensive, or they were just not good enough. I'm not too sure why Yamaha did that, but today I 100% recommend get a 6205 C3 bearing. Literally is bathing in oil all the time, so it should never go wrong. I mean, literally never. I think this one should do 100,000 miles easy. And also what I do recommend is to get the bearing without any seal whatsoever. You don't want a seal in this bearing. The reason for that is you don't want puddle in the cylinder head. You don't need it because these get lubricated from the rockers, because the rockers got an overflow hole on them. So when the pressure is reached the other end of the shaft, which I just changed, I can't show it now, but when it reaches the other end of the shaft, the pressure builds up and it starts spitting oil out towards the cam lobes. So it's well lubricated, don't worry about it. And this three-hole surface of this three-hole is probably equals of the little holes on the bearing altogether, because I could calculate it, how many is it, maybe one square centimeters altogether, and all them little ones in the bearing is probably equals, I don't know, 1.5 square centimeters. So don't worry about it. And also, if you put a seal in the bearing and you're not letting the oil flow back into the crankcase, you could actually starve the engine out of oil, which I think a few people complained on the forum. I have seen a couple of messages that when they give the bike a good, rev out, the oil light comes on. With me, that actually never ever happened with this bearing fitted. The oil is flowing back from the cylinder head all the way back to the crank, so there is no starvation. 100%. I do recommend without any seal. 2000 miles, no problem whatsoever, no oil light coming on, no matter how I ride the bike. So keep that in mind. It's well worth the upgrade, and it's dead easy to do. All you gotta do is just pop off the sprocket. You just pop off the sprocket of the camshaft, then you take off the retainer, which is this one, which sits right there. Look, you take that out, and if you put your bike in top dead center, the whole camshaft with this just slides out. Put this in the bin, put the bearing on, put the camshaft back in, put the bearing on, put this on, torque it down, put that back to the right place, obviously, torque it down, and you're done. Literally can be done in less than, I don't know, an hour, both, if you know what you're doing. Honestly, it's an hour to do. So again, this is my opinion on the bearing. Please let me know in the comments down below if you have done it or not. And yeah, guys, I will see you in the next tutorial or vlogging or whatever I'm doing. And ride safe.